Welcome back to the Sensitivity Doctor. Today we are talking about something that is near and dear to my heart, not only because it has been a lifelong journey for me overcoming insomnia, but because this is something that impacts so many people. When you've endured trauma, for instance, your sleep can become much more shallow for periods of time, and knowing how to handle these bouts of insomnia can prevent lifelong struggles with this. In this episode, I unpack a very powerful treatment with Joseph Pannell, a fellow chronic insomniac. He had 20 years of insomnia to the point where it caused him anxiety, a lost marriage, loss of business, loss of his home even. But you know what? He took that struggle and he turned it into his life's mission. He now works with the NHS, also Britain's Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Defense on helping others overcome insomnia. His book, You Can Sleep Too, was life-changing for me, and we unpack some of that in this episode. So if you want to know more about his tips and tricks, you can go to his YouTube channel, Insomnia Talks. He has this really fun way of putting things into imagery and how to handle when you've had a poor night's sleep that he has a whole really great talk about that you'll have to go check out. So snuggle in, get comfortable, get relaxed, get ready, learn how you can sleep too. I'm thrilled to have you here. Could you tell those listening a little bit about you and what got you on the journey of exploring what I've mentioned before with CBTI, but really this journey of battling insomnia?
So I came to this work after suffering it for 20 years, and I think people misunderstand insomnia. I was just poor sleep, but it's not that. It completely erodes your life. And so I had it for 20 years. I was doing all the rituals all people with insomnia do. 14 was when I first got it, and I always linked it back to I had a tricky time at school when I was 14, moved school, got bullied because I was a bit of an odd kid. As people are when they're 14. And it just sort of never went away for those 20 years. And I tried all the rituals, I tried all the obsessive behaviors. And it was when I was at kind of the lowest, I just stumbled across, like you did with my book, just CBTI, talk about an amazing sleep physiologist here in the UK. Saw a video of her doing that. I just thought, it's got to be worth a go to do this. And by that time, you read about it in the book, right? I'd lost my business because of it. I used to hire out TVs. I lost, my marriage crumbled because of my insomnia. I was just not spending any time with her, and it's in such a dark place. It just was in this mess. And I couldn't afford to live in my house. I was living in a van. So I was at the worst point in my life when I found CBTI. But just one video, it just cut through all the nonsense. It wasn't a tip, it wasn't a trick, it wasn't wear socks to bed. It was quite a hard behavioural and thought pattern changes. It talked about body clock, sleep tribe, which I'd never heard of, and I just had the confidence to book a CBTI program. And after 8 weeks of doing that, I wasn't cured. But I knew I had experienced the best sleep I had, despite all the turmoil in my life that I'd ever had. And then, so I knew that it was real, tangible. And then slowly, after about a year, put in the behaviors that I'd learned and the thought pattern changes, I went from chronic insomnia, life imploded, to someone who's now sleeping like everyone else. And it was never my intention to get into this. I kind of thought I really want to never think about sleep ever again. But then there were people that I knew had insomnia. So I'd go and chat to them and I'd share what I'd learned. And then I'd realize, okay, this is working. They're sleeping better. So I'll just do a bit more volunteer work. I then booked a hall. It's my first ever proper work. I booked a hall.
What was that again?
Facebook. I booked a hall, so like a village hall.
Okay.
It's just my first stumble into it. I picked the village hall, just put it out on Facebook. If you're struggling with insomnia, I'm doing a free talk. Packed. I live in a small village. Well, I did live in a small village back in the UK. Packed hall full of people there.
Wow. So the whole town came out.
Whole town came out because everyone struggles and it's just so varied. And then it just slowly spiraled from there. So then I thought, I might do some training in it, sent my book to a sleep medicine program in Scotland normally. And that got me onto the course. When I was there, there was someone from a sleep charity who was there, and they invited me to work with them on their sleep helpline through them. I did a load of webinars. And since then, I worked with the MOD, NHS. But it all kind of spiraled from, knowing that the advice out there for sleep is awful and I could actually help people. And, it wasn't my plan, but it kind of happened that way. And I'm very glad. I do love it. It's stressful, but I do love it. So, yeah.
It's such a testament to when we endure something and people can integrate it, I guess I would almost call like insomnia the trauma, right? And that trauma integration, like taking something you've gone through and making it part of your story and part of your purpose and having it be a motivator for what you do for everyone. And usually it happens just like you said, just like a cascade or a waterfall, it just without even meaning it. So,
It's
hi to the person in the background.
Yeah, so I should explain. So as in the Philippines, I've had to emergency book a place, and yeah, hopefully it doesn't disturb.
No, I think that's kind of fun. So, for anyone listening, we had an adventure getting our space because we started off with the traffic noise. And so now we have friends in part of the show. So, I'm all for it. So, for people listening who are thinking, okay, insomnia, CBTI, what is CBTI? I feel like it would be good to break down what that is exactly.
Yeah. And so it's a tricky thing to answer because there's no fixed standard to it. And so there's good plumbers, there's bad. So really, CBTI, if I was to really go to the core of what it is, it's about physiologically rebuilding your pattern of sleep. So something called your body clock. Your body clock, people know. Sleep drive, people don't know. So if you can really think of insomnia as a poor pattern of sleep that the brain has taken on and learn. A good analogy for this, I had a client who was a solo round the world boat tripper, and you've got to wake up every 20 minutes, otherwise it's going to be pretty bad news. The boat will sink and go, of course. And so this person would set an alarm every 20 minutes throughout the night to wake themselves up and give themselves 20 minutes of sleep opportunity. Literally within a week of doing that, the brain had taken on that pattern of sleep. Great when you're on the boat, not so great when they returned back to the US and they were still waking up every single 20 minutes. And so if you really think of insomnia as a poor pattern of sleep, so it might be taking ages to fall asleep, it might be waking up early in the morning, it might be waking up multiple times throughout the night. Effectively, the brain has taken on that pattern and it runs with it. So it is physiological, and it's usually because of people's behaviors. It's very common with people when some start spending longer in bed because they become convinced the longer they spend in bed trying to sleep, the better they will sleep. Very intuitive, because that's true in everything in life. The harder you try, the better likelihood you have of achieving success. And this is where all the other stuff around sleep gets it so wrong, because sleep is the absence of effort, and all the other stuff is more effort, more control. So yeah,
Right.
it's behavioral. People change their body clock. So imagine you're constantly moving between time zones.
Mm-hmm.
People with insomnia trying to catch up on sleep. So they're trying to try as best they can if they've not slept in the morning to then catch up on sleep. So the body clock's out of sync, their sleep drive's out of sync. So physiologically, you rebuild that. You also work on the cognition around sleep. So the obsession, the control, the anxiety, the fear, the worry, the thousands of things people with insomnia feel they have to do in order to try and sleep, thousands of things they feel they can't do in order to try and protect it, where insomnia's just there in front of your face all day long. So you're working on reducing that anxiety, reducing that obsession, reducing that control. And once you've done that, you sleep like everyone else. But I'd say 99% of my work is simple behavioral changes. They're simple, not easy. And then getting rid of all the other nonsense people have taken on and tried to do in order to try and fix the condition. So it's the complete opposite of everything else out there, which is do more, try more, and
Right.
more. It's slow behavioral and thought pattern changes. That's essentially what CBTI is.
And when I think about your book, something that really struck me was how many of the different things you tried that I personally can say I have tried in my life.
Yeah.
Everything from melatonin to herbal remedies to a pillow that would sing when I would put my head on it.
Oh, I'm so
Do
sorry.
you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? to, different, sleep environments. And there are aspects, I will say, we'll probably talk about this. And I want to talk to you about stimulation because that's a big one that I still am kind of teetering with. But everything from, well, if I eat this certain thing, or if I drink this certain thing, or if I watch this certain show. So I definitely related to a lot of that. And one of the things about CBT, I was saying to my fellow therapist, we were having our team meeting yesterday. I joke sometimes with CBT that there's really a CBT for everything. And in actuality, what we really should be calling it is changing how you think about blank, right? So, changing how you think about and then how you behave about insomnia. So, I think one of the big things, too, from what you were just saying that I have adopted now that has made a huge impact are things around like not obsessing over getting good sleep. That has been such a game changer. Like, if I'm going to sleep less, I'm going to sleep less. If I'm going to get less than this many hours, I'm going to get this many hours. I think there's a fallacy that you talk about in the book that I think is really helpful for people to understand around the notion that we're supposed to get 8 hours of sleep at night, or that there's this prescribed amount that we're all supposed to hit. I'm wondering if you could speak to that because I think that increases unnecessary anxiety in a lot of people.
A huge amount. So sleep is like shoe size. So the average size shoes for men in the UK is 8.5. Not very useful if you're in the UK, but that's what it is.
What would that be in America? Like 10?
9.5,
Nine and
I
a half,
think.
10? Yeah, okay. We'll
Maybe.
just
I don't
throw
know if we got
numbers out
bigger
there.
feet. I'm not a shoe expert. But yeah, so average size shoes are 8.5 in the UK, but they don't just sell that one size because
Right.
you're going to go out of business pretty quick. And the real problem with believing that you need to get 8 hours of sleep, and you're always told this and all the dreadful, awful things that's going to happen if you don't get these 8 hours, is it causes people, well, okay, well, I need 8 hours. So I'm going to spend, well, 8.5 hours in bed. That's where you'll start to try and get this 8 hours. If you imagine, and so let's say you're a person who needs 6 hours of sleep, which is well within the normal range. It's like, size 6 shoes is well within the normal range. So your body only wants and needs to give you 8.5 to make you feel relaxed and refreshed. You're trying to get 8 hours. So you spend 8.5 hours in bed, but you only need 6 hours. Mathematically, you're going to be awake for 2 hours during that night time. And a good analogy, imagine you've got a pastry dish, 8.5-inch pastry dish, but you've only got 6 inches worth of pastry to spread onto that. You spread it onto this 8-inch dish, it might not reach the end. So that'd be someone waking up 2 hours and struggling to fall back to sleep. It's not going to start from the start. Someone who takes ages, 2 hours to fall asleep, is going to have loads of holes and gaps in the middle. Someone waking up multiple times throughout the night is going to be a massive hole in the middle. Someone wakes up 2 hours in the middle of the night, or even it might spread on, but the quality is going to be really thin, fragmented. And this is someone who spends that night and half awake, half asleep. They don't know whether or not sleeping at all. And simply, but just to understand them, and not everyone needs 8 hours, and reducing your sleep opportunity. I don't mean actually spending less time in bed, because some people like reading in bed and watching Netflix and all that, but just realizing that trying to get more sleep than the body needs can be very unhelpful. And when you're in this place where you're fighting, forcing, pleading with sleep, body temperature, adrenaline, cortisol, I talk about in the book, the wolf. The wolf walks into your bedroom, and then the body goes, well, there's a wolf in your bedroom. I'm not going to let you sleep. And a lot of this can be avoided just simply by giving yourself enough sleep opportunity, but not too much. And it never ends at 8 hours. It's only 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 hours that you spend in bed. And then
Trying.
you try, and then the bed becomes a horror chamber, a torture chamber. I've heard everything. In my own, I'd call it a torture chamber, a horror chamber. I'd call it bed and nails. And so much comes from that, spending too long in bed. Yeah, real big problem.
I definitely have found that association at times where, and I think also understanding CBTI has helped me understand that there might be periods where my sleep does suffer because maybe there's some external stress or there's something going on, and that's okay. It can be very temporary. And I noticed that during those times in the past, before understanding this and what you said in your book and what this treatment is all about, I would do exactly what you're saying. Like, okay, well, if I just lay here, if I count sheep, if I breathe, if I try to calm my body down, if I do tangents where I'm doing different word scrambles, all these things. But I would find that I would get more of like a restless leg feeling the longer I laid in bed. And I think that was to your point, the cortisol just kind of slowly creeping up, up, up. I have found personally for me, and then I'd love to know other suggestions you have because this doesn't work for everyone. If I start to feel that, I personally have to get out of my bed with low lights and I have to get in a steaming hot shower. And I will be in there just kind of like eyes closed, relaxed until I start to feel a little more relaxed. And then I'll get back in. So it's almost like by getting out for 20 minutes and just abandoning the bed completely, and then waiting until I feel a bit more of that exhaustion again, or even just relaxation, I will then invite myself back into the bed. And I have found I will fall asleep. Yeah, it might take me an hour, between all of that, realizing I have to get up, getting up, doing everything, and then going back to bed. As opposed to times where I tried to fight the wolf in bed, like you're saying, it would be hours of watching the clock. And then when I finally did fall asleep, to your point, it was hard to tell I was even sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anything you do to try and force, create, and manufacture sleep with the intention of doing that, it's like breathing or meditating or body relaxation to try and turn your hair blue. I mean, it's impossible for everyone. If that's even harder for me to do.
I actually
You,
loved this in your book. I don't know if you would
yeah.
be so kind as to share this little trick with everyone. Kind of
So
a
it,
riddle or something, a magic trick.
so that you're lying in bed, or you're there, and you're trying to bring your chakras down, and you're trying to relax your legs, and yeah, I mean, you're just sitting there going, "I want to turn my hair blue. I want to turn my hair blue. I want to turn my hair blue." And then you kind of get cross and angry and stressed and annoyed with yourself that you have not been able to achieve something that's completely impossible that no one else on the planet can do. And this is where it's so tricky with sleep, because all these things that people are told they should do in bed, when you do, and I'm not saying relaxation isn't helpful to people, meditate, all of these things are wonderful, but when you do them with the wrong intention of trying to force physiological process, it's like sitting at the dinner table with a knife and fork in hand saying, I must feel hungry, I want to feel hungry, and then just getting cross and stressed that you cannot
Right.
manufacture this process. And so what you said about leaving the bed and bedroom and just returning to it when you feel sleepy, calm, and relaxed again, what you've done there is you've done the opposite. You've shifted your intent. So you've gone, I'm going to stop trying to sleep. I'm just going to relax, feel calm, and then I'll return to bed when I feel sleepy again. And that is really the thing, that the actual crux of insomnia, that whenever people sleep, it's because they don't have that intention to sleep. I have loads of people with insomnia that tell me, I'll fall asleep in front of the TV. And everything about sleep hygiene says that's completely wrong, because you're fully clothed and there's blue light and you've maybe got a
Yeah, I'm
lamp
very
on and you're
intrigued
on a
because I'm looking at you
sofa.
suspiciously right now with that one.
Yeah.
With the
And
TV.
yet people drop to sleep in front of the TV.
Uh-huh.
And they go, why? Why is that? It's because you're not trying to sleep. You're not making any effort to sleep.
Right.
And then
Okay.
half an hour later, you've woken up and you realize you've just slept. Well, when you get into bed, suddenly all the effort, all the force, all the control happens. And so this is really kind of the crux of insomnia. And so it's really about the absence of effort, and that what you talked about was stimulus control, where you go and have a shower. That is stimulus control. And so, but it doesn't have to be out of bed in the bedroom. Some people say to me, well, leaving the bed in the bedroom causes me more anxiety because I might be a bit more stressed leaving it, especially if it's cold and in the winter. And I say, okay, well, read in bed or watch Netflix in bed. No, because of the blue light. fighting forcing clean sleep is 100 times worse. Very small correlation between blue light, and it doesn't cause insomnia. It slightly impacts people's sleep, but anxious, stress, wolf in the bedroom, 100 times worse. And so it's about not fighting, forcing it. So really, anything you do in the middle of the night, if you're stressed and anxious and worried, isn't that lying there fighting it.
Okay, you have blown my mind with this TV thing, and I want to ask you about this because
Yeah.
I work with a lot of individuals with ADHD and different forms of neurodiversity, highly sensitives. A lot of the people that listen to this podcast are highly sensitive people. I'm trying to imagine turning a TV on and not getting engrossed to the point where you just lose track of time and hours have gone by and your cortisol starts spiking up because you've been awake past your sleep window. Now you're totally disrupting everything I think I know.
Yeah. Well, if the drive to sleep is there, you will sleep. You know, you can ask your body to be awake. If you were to be doing an essay, right late or doing a podcast, you can go past your normal sleep time. But if you're doing something passive like watching TV, the drive to sleep will take over. And as long as you're generally calm, relaxed, then you are asleep. And often it's a case of people are in a dark room where there's no stimulation and there's nothing going on there. And so then their thoughts will spiral, the anxiety will be obsession, the worry, the fear spikes. And so why people are sleeping whilst they're watching TV is because they're just doing something passive and then they drop off to sleep. So I'm not saying that, you should be doing that in order to sleep. It's just really just an example that as soon as people stop making effort to sleep, as soon as people stop trying to sleep, they will fall asleep. So it's really about, and people get so obsessive about insomnia. I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Often it's about asking the question, is this something I would have done when I was a good sleeper? Is this something a good sleeper will do? And good sleepers do watch TV before bed and they don't catch on fire. And really the obsession, the control, the fear, the anxiety, the worry is far, far worse than a little bit of blue light. Maybe don't watch the most intense action film you can find.
Okay, well
But
that makes sense. That resonates
yeah,
because that is one thing I do notice if I watch something. For me, Netflix at night is just the way I love to chill because I'm such a mentally stimulated person throughout the day, all the work that I do and the people I talk to, that watching something mindless on Netflix is just the almost like the signal. And I loved you said something in the book about like coupling that space of time before you go to bed with something relaxing, not because you're trying to force sleep, but because you're almost rewarding yourself that this time that you do get to just relax and do whatever you want. So there's a positive association between like that time and like the time where you will be tired.
yes,
Did
buffer
I say
zone.
that correctly?
Yeah, that was great.
Mhm.
It's,
Mhm. You can tell I read the book.
yeah, if you don't remember it right, I didn't write it correctly. But yeah, you basically got that. It's about, so you don't fill your 3 hours before bed with a laundry list of things you have to do in order to try and sleep, because this is very common for people with insomnia. I can't sleep, therefore I need to take 20 different sleep supplements and I need to do yoga, I need to do meditation, I need to do this, I need to do that. None of this is bad. It's not that any of this is things, but it's really about choosing the things that you find enjoyable and choosing the things that you find grounding and just do them for the sole pleasure of feeling relaxed, to help you feel relaxed, calm and happy, getting you looking forward to bedtime
Right, right,
rather than a laundry list and a checklist of 1,000 things you can't do and 1,000 things you
right.
must do in order to sleep. So with everything, it's a paradoxical tightrope. But insomnia is the intention behind things, which is
Yes.
problematic. I never ban, you can't do yoga now. I do loads of relaxing things before bed, but my intention of how I do them now is very, very different to how I used to do them with insomnia. And I do
That's
violence.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's a really good distinction. And I think probably the big part of the cognitive restructuring piece of this, of the
Mhm.
intention. And, you said good sleeper a couple times. I loved how you had mentioned, and maybe you could answer this for us, the percentage of time that most, quote, good sleepers actually do sleep well. That was very comforting to me when I read about that in your book.
About 80% is a good sleeper, is a normal sleeper. I would estimate And you'll still have times as a good sleeper where you're going through a stressful time, where you're going through a bereavement, where you've just got more on in your life, or sometimes you don't even know why, where you'll have a week or two of disrupted, poor quality sleep. It's just that then you learn that this is normal, it's a normal part of sleep, and not to panic, change your behaviors, and then start doing all the 1001 protective measures and active sleep efforts, which I call them, the things you have to do to try and sleep. So, but
Right.
just that understanding. And sleep is inherently designed to be imperfect, because when we were cavemen, we're still running the same brains. It's why we still have the same fears and the same anxiety. We're still running the same brains as cavemen. Sleep was the most dangerous thing we could have done. And it's only been a very short time we've had our locked doors and foot spas and lovely pillows and all the nice comforts we have, you know, in modern life. And so sleep's inherently designed to be imperfect. Loads of safety mechanisms built into your sleep. And if you ask for it to be perfect, you'll set yourself up for insomnia, because as soon as it's not perfect, panic, fear, worry, and which is why I got such a issue with a lot of the other YouTube channels, which is all about perfecting sleep, taking the right supplements at the right time and not doing lots of things, because it just sends people down the rabbit hole. More obsession, more control, more fear, more anxiety, more worry. And I've got so many people that have slept fine, started, listened to some of these other, and that said you have to be perfect all the time, you have to do everything perfectly, and you have to, and then spiraled into full-blown chronic insomnia, and just that acceptance that it can never and will never be perfect. Very, very helpful.
What you're saying too is really hitting home when I think about neurodiversity I was bringing up. Those who are highly sensitive have a more active limbic system, which is the part of the brain that signals there's danger. And then we also look at the ADHD brain, which some research is showing there's some strong similarities in activity in the limbic system. And actually, I don't know if you've read this before, that the ADHD brain is inclined to be more of a biphasic sleep machine. Have you ever read that?
No, I'm learning. It's good. Yeah.
Okay. So, if, in my ADHD book for women, I had explored this in my research. So, people with ADHD, so you can take this for, any.
I'm going to nick it, make it a video. Yeah.
Yes, please do. So they tend to be more, first of all, technically, this is going to change per person, but most of those with ADHD tend to have their cortisol is still rising and the melatonin does not start to rise quite as early in the day as the non ADHD brain. So the ADHD brain will start to get more of that kind of that peak and valley later in the day. So they may more naturally want to fall asleep later in the day than some other non ADHD brains. This is not across the board, but this is just most. But this is what blew my mind, is that because the ADHD brain tends not to REM quite as deeply as the non ADHD brain. Did I say that correctly? The ADHD brain does not REM as deeply as the non ADHD brain. They are more inclined to and really need 2 phases of sleep per day. So the ADHD brain really, really thrives off of at least one other chunk of the day, completely separate, where they're getting a second dose of sleep. And so this could look different for everyone. This could look like I have a client who she'll go to bed at night. She sleeps really great from about, I want to say 10 to 2. And then she wakes up, she does a couple things. She kind of does her kind of late into the morning, early evening, whatever, however you want to put it. And then she'll go back to sleep for a couple hours. And then she feels great the rest of the day. Or I have other ADHD clients of mine who kind of follow more of a traditional sleep schedule. And then they have to prioritize a nap in the afternoon. So it's interesting if you look into the research on this, that this is very congruent with that kind of brain, and it speaks to this hunter farmer mentality about the ADHD brain versus the non ADHD brain, that the hunters are seen more as the way that the ADHD brain is wired, because those who are more inclined to be constantly scanning or distracted or looking at things in their environment are the ones who would have been more easily woken in the cave.
Mhm.
So this
Yeah.
all, like, it's just really interesting. And so I'm curious. When you think about the work that you've done and how you help people who have racing thoughts, anxiety, things that, kind of keep them in that more shallow state of sleep, like how do you think applying these measures and the different principles of CBTI could help those kind of brains, like people who are really, really light sleepers, whether from neurodiversity or trauma or anxiety?
So if we go back to that pastry dish analogy with the really thin, fragmented pastry dish, by reducing that sleep opportunity and these simple behaviors of waking up at the same time every single day, go into bed when you're actually sleeping, you've got that drive to sleep, it's going to consolidate your sleep. It's going to improve your sleep quality, as will what you were saying earlier about not lying in bed fighting, forcing, cleaning sleep, because you're just training and conditioning the brain that the bed is a place that at worst is a fight or flight, sheer terror, anxiety, stress, and worry. Or even if it's not as strong as that, it's a place where you lie there, you problem solve, you ruminate, you think, you obsess, you worry about the day, and you overthink and you overanalyze. It's ADHD and type A personalities are 3 times more likely to have insomnia with these type A
Not surprised.
perfectionist people, because you want to do everything perfectly. And so it's physiologically it's going to help your sleep, but then it's really about how you approach CBTI. And this CBTI is such a spectrum of, you can have a very, very strict approach to it on one end, where you've got to do very restrictive control of behaviors, and then your sleep. Or what I advocate for is a much more softer, gentle approach, and I think that's going to massively, well, is how I help everyone, not just people with ADHD, because anything you do in very strict CBTI, obsessively and ritualistically, will reinforce obsession and control. And so it's not about whether or not CBTI is going to help these people. It's more, yes, it will, because the alternatives of sleep hygiene, which is just tips, tricks, really, it is not. It's like tiny plaster for someone who's got their arm ripped
How
off.
would you define sleep hygiene for someone who's curious?
Sleep hygiene is, if you already sleep pretty well, then yeah, it's nice to have a cool bedroom. And I probably don't advise that you have 20 espresso shots to the eyeballs.
Yeah, let's not
The
do that.
people with insomnia, they're not doing that. They're already doing everything perfectly. It's so I don't say don't do sleep hygiene. Of course, have a cool, dark bedroom. You want it to be quiet, but if you try and use it to cure a long-term chronic problem, it's just going to create more frustration, because if you're literally, we're talking chronic insomnia, terrified of the bed and the bedroom, your behaviors are completely erratic around sleep. You've got 1,000 rituals that you have to do to make yourself sleep. You can't stay in a hotel because you're worried that maybe you stop sharing a bed with your partner. You limited your entire life, where the whole lens is is this going to increase my chance of sleep? Is this going to reduce it? And your entire life is obsession, 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 control, control. It's always there as a 24-hour condition. Having your bedroom at 17 centigrade rather than 19 is not going to fix this problem. It is why it's such a frustration for me. Because when you go to your GP, your doctor, this is, let's start with sleep hygiene, and then we're finished with sleeping tablets.
Like, I'm wearing socks.
I've tried
My
four
feet are
different
not cold.
It's just, you know what I mean? Like
I do.
a
I
wolf.
do.
A wolf in your bedroom and you got some socks on. You're just like, yeah,
Get away. They're woolly. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
it's not going to scare a wolf away. Wolves probably like
No.
socks. Well, I don't know. I'm not a wolf
True.
expert.
It's funny. I
Yeah.
don't know if you want to market it, but I almost feel like what you're doing is like CBTI, like compassionate
Mm,
cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia.
yeah.
Right?
I might have that. CBTI. I'm always looking for a
Yeah.
different name, because I get lumped in sometimes with the very traditional, harsh CBTI. And then people go, I've tried that, it doesn't work. And I go, well, tell me what you've done before. Oh, I was told to leave the bedroom after 15 minutes, do something boring. And I had to fill in a very strict journal, and they'd come and they'd look at it and they'd frown at me if I got out of bed after. I just think, well, okay, you're a highly sensitive person, ADHD, you're already
Right.
highly critical of yourself. People with insomnia, low self-esteem, low self-worth, and then you've got someone that's whipping you and
Right.
telling you doing things wrong. Mm, well,
Well, feel
it's not.
free to consult. We can try to we can try to develop your new it's not really hard. It's not
CBTI.
really easy to say though. I don't know if that's as marketable, but
I like it. Yeah, it's good.
yeah. So there are, there's two other little things that we didn't touch on yet that I'm so curious that I wanted to make sure to ask you about. So part of it earlier on when you and I were just getting to know each other and kind of chatting a little, I was mentioning how there's been this narrative around sleep in my family for a long time. My mom has always been not the best sleeper. And okay, so you said something in the book that I had never heard about and was really wild. And it was a specific type of insomnia that people don't realize they're sleeping even though they are. And so I started contemplating whether or not that's something she struggles with because she's not walking around sick. She's not healed over from insomnia. She doesn't seem sleep deprived, yet she never thinks she sleeps. So, can you talk about this? Because this was really interesting to me. I'd never heard about it. And also, I'm curious why you said CBTI is not really great for these types of folks. This was very interesting to me.
You need to define what is true paradoxical insomnia. This is
And that's
paradoxical
what it's called,
insomnia,
right? Okay. Mhm.
and what virtually everyone with insomnia has, which is
Okay.
they feel that they're sleeping far, far less than they actually are. So they've had studies in sleep labs where they've shaken someone with insomnia on the shoulder and asked them, were you just asleep now or were you awake? And that person would say, oh, swear blind, I'm awake. I've been awake and I've been awake for the last 2 hours. And they showed them on video. They were snoring or their eyes were in rapid eye movements. And this person
So
was swear
wild.
blind, but they were actually awake. And it's especially with people with insomnia with higher cortisol levels when they got some analogy or, if you've got your caveman and there's a saber-toothed tiger camped at the front of the cave, the body has to sleep. It has to get the core amount of sleep, but it needs, and it will find a way of getting it. But it will take on a very light, fragmented pattern of sleep. And so people with insomnia still have conscious thoughts and still be sleeping because they think there's a saber-toothed tiger outside my cave. Can't fully relax. I can't. And so you take on a very active pattern of sleep, which is what CBTI will help rebuild your pattern. And when it takes away the anxiety, kind of gets rid of the saber-toothed tiger as well. But it stops all this really fragmented light sleep. But yeah, you can still have conscious thoughts and still be sleeping. So CBTI will help rebuild your pattern. But true paradoxical insomnia is people will say, I literally haven't slept for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So not 1 minute.
Oh, okay. All right, mom,
And
you're
so there
safe. I don't think you have it.
are
But can you explain it though?
tiny percent of the population. And so for these people, you wouldn't want to reduce the amount of time they're spending in bed because they're already sleep. And I've got paradoxical insomnia. I've got very, very, very rare that you'll have it. If you've there will be, and it's insomnia. It's not that you sleep terribly every single night. You get some good nights, you get some bad nights, you get some really restless nights, but you do sleep. And people with insomnia massively underestimate the amount of sleep that they're getting. And if this wasn't true, if you were chronically sleep deprived with insomnia, you'd be dropping off in your chair. So if I was chronically sleep
Right.
deprived, I'd be asleep. You'd be waking me up, getting your hair
Mhm.
cut. Don't need that anymore, but getting your hair cut, dropping across, asleep in your chair, at work, at meetings. And so it's such a strange thing with people with insomnia. They think, well, I never feel sleepy, but I don't sleep. But you do sleep far more than you think when you've got insomnia. Your body will always find a way of getting the core amount of sleep, but it's just that the quality of your sleep isn't good. There's a lot of wakefulness, there's a lot of anxiety. But yeah, so CBTI is helpful for people that have that kind of half awake, half asleep, where they are getting sleep. It's just that true paradoxical insomnia where you need to get a sleep study and speak to a sleep physiologist, which is incredibly rare, where you feel you've literally never slept don't reduce your time in bed because you're all ready. But we do work still on behavioral changes in the daytime, get people stuck back into their day, anxiety reduction, all the other elements, but it's not helpful to,
Okay, so a lot of the components do work, but the sleep restriction piece is not really necessarily recommended for paradoxical
Yes,
insomnia. Is that what I'm hearing?
yes, because someone with paradoxical insomnia, well, I never sleep at all, so I'm going to spend
Right, so they
no
can't really
time in
determine
bed.
when
Is
they're
that what you
sleeping, when they're
asked?
not.
Yeah.
Right. Okay,
And
that makes sense.
but I sleep restriction, people think, well, I'm reducing my sleep if I'm restricting my sleep. It's not even that. It's more kind of reducing your bedtime. I call it bedtime reduction. So you're not actually reducing the amount of sleep you're getting. You sleep more. It's just that the quality, you get it within a certain window. Physiologically, then you get that predictability. So, okay,
Right.
I get this sleep in this window when your sleep's not predictable.
You wait until you're tired.
Yeah, you wait till you're sleepy,
Mm,
which people with insomnia never have. But when you start doing the behavior changes, you get your
eventually.
sleepy feeling back in the evening. But people with insomnia do feel sleepy because every time they've slept, they felt even with a sleeping tablet, because they still got a drive to sleep better. It's just that sleeping tablet dampens down the anxiety, the fear response that prevents the sleep drive taking over.
Is it true that if someone has been having poor sleep, I think of, times when I had my children and they were really little, they were terrible sleepers in the beginning, probably because both of them are highly sensitive. And so I was getting very little sleep. I remember not feeling very tired during the day because it did feel like there was more stress hormone surging through my body because of the fact that I was getting less sleep. So it almost feels counterproductive.
To what feels counterproductive, sorry, to
Meaning, I would imagine if I'm getting less sleep, I should feel sleepier, but I was getting less
yes,
sleep and I felt
yeah.
more awake.
Yeah, you kind of feel tired but wired, 20 espresso feeling where you've got that higher level of cortisol. But you would, if your core amount of sleep dropped below what the body needs, it's not that much less than what's your optimum amount of sleep. You drop off the sleep like that. Navy SEALs in their L week, they call it their selection week. I don't recommend people do this, but they have a horrible week where they're only allowed 1 hour of sleep per night. The rest of the time they're running, shooting, all the stuff that they do. And literally within the second day, they could be swimming and they're dropping off to sleep, running,
Oh
bullets
my
hailing
gosh.
over there, dropping to sleep like that because of these
So
people.
there's a point.
Yeah, and that's really reassuring to know when you've got insomnia that there's always a cut-off point, but you will sleep no matter what. Now, obviously, you don't want that. You want to deal with the thought patterns, the anxiety, but just that assurance that you will sleep no matter what, and you are getting more sleep than you. And it's really hard for people with insomnia to take on board, but they're not chronically sleep deprived. It's really when you start doing the behavioral changes and you start feeling sleepy and you get that sleepy feeling in the evening and you feel sleepier during the daytime, which is a strange thing because you're sleeping better, but you're sleepy. And that's a lot because of that, what you're talking about after you've had your children, the anxiety, obsession is down. So always you're on all the time and you relax when you stop fighting this condition. And this is what I think when people often come to me is I just stopped fighting. I just had some very simple, and I always say simple, not easy, things to do. I got stuck back into my days again. I just started doing the things that I used to do when I was a good sleeper. So insomnia wasn't this thing in my face all the time. And I just, because I was no longer fighting it and obsessing about it and always trying to fix it with the next supplement or the next Google search, the anxiety around sleep came down and then I slept. So,
hmm
yeah.
How would you recommend someone who really wants to do all of this and really believes in what you're saying, but maybe they're a shift worker?
Yeah, so shift work is trickier, but it's really about once you get the understanding of how the body clock works and how the sleep drive works, then
It's
you've
hard.
got that education. So then,
Yeah.
okay, so I am a shift worker. Now I want to move on from my nights to my day shift, for example. So if you were to go to bed at, let's say, 9 a.m. when you get back from your shift and wake up at your normal time after your shift, let's say 10, 11, 12, 2, 4 p.m., you've still got your body clock and your sleep drive set to waking you up at 4 p.m. on that. So it would be a case of, I understand the body clock, I understand the sleep drive now. If I want to shift my body clock, it would be a case of giving myself less sleep opportunity on that first night, maybe start waking up, maybe wake up at 1 p.m. instead. And then because I've had less sleep, because my body clock and my sleep drive is now anchored from that 1 p.m. time point, I'll feel sleepier earlier the next night. So it's really when you get the understanding of how the body clock works, how the sleep drive works, then you know how to shift it. And also just that same principle applies that I want to get onto this new shift pattern, so therefore I'm going to now go to bed early. You cannot sleep unless you are sleepy. So it's still about understanding that still go to bed when you've got that drive to sleep. Oh, that means I'm not going to be in bed until 4 in the morning. Well, that's a lot better than going to bed at 11 p.m. because you think you should go to bed at 11 p.m. to try and force yourself onto that new time schedule, lying there in bed 6-7 hours, until 4 a.m. But then because you spend that whole time fighting with sleep, cortisol. And so just to understand, you can't sleep until you're sleepy. The wake time is really important. You build your body clock and your sleep drive from the anchor point of your wake time. And light's very influential for sleep. So using light as well. But
To
shift
wake
work,
yourself back up.
yeah, it is trickier. It's just about understanding the principles of it. But the real principle is you cannot sleep unless you are sleepy. Wake time is the most important thing. And you are going to, when you're moving between your, essentially different time zones after moving between shifts, you are going to have tricky sleep in that time. But if you understand how sleep works, that's a real tool for you to know exactly what to do yourself. So education, I think, about body
Yeah.
clock sleep.
That's an interesting way to put it, almost like you're shifting time zones. I have a client who is a cop who works in the evenings only a couple days a week. I have another one who's a nurse who does the same, and life happens during the day and they want to be able to be part of life. And I've noticed that when we set our appointments, it's almost like a buffer day. Like at the end of that week's shift, they have that buffer day, I think, what you're talking about, where they have to force wakefulness earlier than they would want to so that they can shift their
Yes.
sleep to be a little bit more in tune with maybe others who are awake during the day. And then, gosh, I don't know how they do it. That just seems so hard.
Yeah, it is tricky with work. It's just about making it as manageable as you possibly can. So it's another challenge, but it's about, either you face the challenge with the right knowledge about sleep and the body clock and understanding, or you face it with zero understanding, and you can make it a lot easier if you really understand the mechanics of sleep. And then you become your own sleep expert. Okay, well, yeah, I am going to get up at this 1 p.m. because I want to sleep earlier the next night, and I know not to go to bed until sleep. And all these behaviors will come naturally from understanding. That's why I spend so long in the book educating around sleep, the sleep knowledge sections. The behaviors are simple. There's not that many you need to do, but you really need to understand why you're doing them, why they're important in order to actually then do them. And then you can let go of your sleep when you understand what's important and what's not. So become your own guide. Yeah.
And there's one word that we have not mentioned that I kind of brought up a little bit when I was talking about ADHD. I almost feel like it's a dirty word right now, but the word nap.
Mm. Yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on napping, because when I think about napping, I'm thinking it would completely disrupt what you're talking about with creating sleep pressure.
Yeah. So initially, if you're using naps to compensate for poor quality sleep at nighttime, then it's going to be tricky to get that good consolidated sleep at nighttime. You want your sleep to be predictable, because the more predictable it is, the more you step back from it and the less obsessive and worried and controlling you
Right.
are
The easier
around
it
it.
becomes.
Nice analogy. If you've got two friends, one of them's super reliable, one of them's super unreliable. Reliable one is going to take you to the airport at 9 p.m. You're relaxed, you're calm, you're happy because you know they're going to do it.
Yes.
Unreliable one's going to take you to the airport at 9 p.m. you're spending a whole day anxious,
Thanks.
stressed, and worried because it's not that they won't take you. It's just that there's that uncertainty around that. And so if you can get that good consolidated sleep at nighttime, this will bring a lot of the obsession down. And then once you're not then compensating by napping at night, then you can start napping afterwards. So it's about, and even, with my compassionate CBTI, which I'm quite liking
Yes,
that.
I'm telling you, it's going to
Yeah,
be a thing.
the CBTI.
Keep me
That's quite
posted.
good. All right. Do you want royalties when I use it?
Not royalties, but maybe I could help you with some creative
Acknowledgement.
things. I love
Okay.
that.
It's about then, so try not to, but sometimes when people are on this from your program, Joe, I had a nap. I'm such an awful, dreadful person. I say, wonderful. You stepped out the storm for a bit. You looked forward
Mhm,
to going to bed. You used to say you couldn't nap, and now you've had a nap. It's
mhm,
really about, you don't need to be perfect, just good enough. And so,
mm.
whilst I say it's best to not nap in the early stage until your body clock, your sleep drive, your pattern of sleep is rebuilt, 80%, like a good diet, allows for cake and Hopkins ice cream, is what we have in the UK. So does this program. So try and keep
Right.
them short before 3 p.m. If you don't do that and you're on just awesome, you're great, just nap and be happy that you slept and keep going. But yeah, overall, napping's fine. But if you're having 3 hours, middle way is always good. Look at how you're using naps, and then I nap, I don't catch fire, everything's fine. Yeah.
I love that because really it's all about the fact that, quote, normal sleepers nap too.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
everyone, as they lean into what you shared in your book and what you really wonderfully shared today, is leaning into a sense of safety around sleep and not having it be a crisis or, as you said, a wolf coming to steal your socks. So so I have just absolutely loved this conversation. I really appreciate what you've done for me. You have helped my sleep. Your book has helped my sleep. You are helping my clients. I hope and I feel so sure that you are helping listeners, and I'm curious if they wanted to keep in touch, learn about your CCCBDI, learn about, the different offerings you have. I know you have a lot of resources. Where could they find you and what should they look for?
So I've got a free YouTube channel, Insomnia Talks. So I hope that'll be easy to find, Insomnia Talks. Got the book that you've read. It's on Audible, it's on Amazon. You Can Sleep Too is my first one. I've got a dual book, which is your 2-in-1 CBTI book. But You Can Sleep Too is the one that you've read. It's on Amazon, it's on Audible as well. And my website, SleepSeek, sleepseek.com. I've got an online program which is video based, and I also do one-to-one consultations. So for people all around the world, America, Japan, I just did via Zoom. So yeah, you got a few offerings. You've got free stuff on YouTube, you've got books, you've got an online sleep program with a forum where people support each other and you get email support.
Right. Oh, that's awesome.
You've got that one-to-ones as well. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming and for everything that you've shared, and rest well, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.